Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cash That. This is your host, Joe Dalera, and this episode is once again brought to you by our good friends at Rhythm. Rhythm is the #1 AI betting tool in the market, and you can get it for a week for free. And if you like it, come back, get a discount on your first month as well with the link down in the bio. But Rhythm has been awesome. It's really been helpful for me betting a little bit of college basketball, and it helped me with my bracket too. And over the first two rounds, the first weekend, Rhythm is outperforming. It's actually beating the average ESPN bracket by about 4 points. That's like 2 to 4 games better than average. And it can take that. It applies for baseball, NBA, obviously college hoops, and NFL as well when we get to NFL season again. But it really helps ground you. It helps you with your modeling, it helps you with your player props as well. And it is just an absolutely incredible tool that you can have at your fingertips, at your desktop, or in your phone in the app. So definitely check it out. Get a week for free on me with the link down here in the bio. And real quick, before we get into the picks, we have a free week trial of the huddle. It's MLB opening week. There obviously were the games in Asia over the like last week or so, but now the main chunk, the main part of the opening slate starts on Thursday, and we've got a free week for the people. And that link is going to be right down here in the bio. Even if you've been a trialer before, you can get in for free for this week. We reopened it up for everybody, and that way you can get all of our picks, whether it's baseball. Matt's been doing highlight, NBA. There's a little bit of soccer going on as well. So, and plus obviously college basketball for the tournament. So plenty of picks, and you can get it for a free week, and hopefully you're able to stay around after that. I think we're going to be cashing for you, and you can stay and join, and we can continue to cash together. So let's talk about the NBA though real quick. There's a couple things going on right now. March basketball, I've talked about this on here. I've talked about it on Buckets, talked about it on a couple different shows, but March basketball is so bizarre. There's obviously like the March Madness for the NBA, and it's been very tough betting on, props, teams, whatever right now. And I just had probably some like the worst like 4-day stretch I've had in like a very long time. It like whatever, transparency, it doesn't matter. Like you guys know my stuff's always available whenever you want. You can always you can get an up-to-date look at my record over the past forever, whenever you want to in the Action app. Third party verified. I can't change it. So it is what it is. Like if I have a bad day, I have a bad day. It's there. Well, I'm not saying this in terms of like a transparency thing because I'm not particularly worried about that. The reason I'm bringing this up though is like we go through hot streaks, we go through cold streaks, and I think that one of the things that's most important is being able to like reassess and reground yourself sometimes. And the reason I'm saying that is there's really two different things going on here. One, when I miss picks, or like if I miss any picks, I try to go back and I'm like, why did I miss? What was the issue? What did I miss here? But like and I think sometimes like for individual plays, that's fine. And I think that even with picks that you win, I like to look through and I'm like, was that lucky? Like, should that have hit, or did I catch a break? And I think it's important to always try to reassess and look at not only your losses but your wins as well, to try to figure out not only why you're performing well, but also like were you making mistakes? Was your cap lazy? Like whatever, right? And even though like I had like a bad couple days, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, like why am I struggling right now with these plays? And I didn't feel like it was something in my process, to be honest with you. Like looking through, like it wasn't something where like earlier in the season I was like, I think I got a little play happy, and let's say I had 7 plays and really I probably should only have like 5. And I kept noticing that the plays that I was adding on like 6th or 7th, like my later ads were bad. And I was losing those like a higher clip than the first couple looks that I had. So I just narrowed down the card. I was like, I'm not going to extend it because I seem to keep like adding on picks for volume that I don't need to win. Right. And like it was almost like for content. And I was like, this is stupid. Like if I have 5 plays, I like 5 plays. If there are actually 7 plays that I like, then I like 7 plays. But if there's only 3 I like, I don't need to get up to 7. Right. I think that's important. But when I was going through the past couple days, a lot of the plays like I liked, they matched a lot of the projections, they matched my cap, they matched from like a hit rate perspective. And sometimes it's hard to pin down exactly why you're losing. And sometimes you can just run bad. Like there can just be like a little bit of variance. And like I said, when you're playing the past couple, let's say I was playing 3 plays a day, right? And if you lose 2/3 of them, so you go 1 and 2 every day for like a week, it's going to look like shit and you're going to lose a decent amount of units. But at the same time, it's still a small enough sample that you could just be getting hit to a degree with some variance based on the way that you've performed over the long term. So you don't want to change too much of what you're doing. And I think it's important to think about, and if you can't really pin down one thing, you don't want to start changing up your entire process because you had a little bit of a cold streak. I think that you need to, maybe reassess. But I also don't recommend almost generally people reducing their unit size. And the reason I say this is, like, let's say you are a $10 better and you run cold let's say you lose 10 bets in a row and you go, all right, I'm losing too much money. I'm down $100. I don't want to have a $10 unit anymore. I'm going to cut it down to 5. Not that you're chasing losses, but it makes it harder to get yourself into a net positive scenario, I think, because you change the amount that you were risking. So when you went through your cold streak that really may not have been anything besides variance because it's a 10 bet sample, right? You're basically saying that I don't like the process that I had and I can't tolerate the risk and I want to change the scenario that's going to make it harder for you to get into a positive situation. And it's obviously something you need to consider, I think, when you're betting generally. And that's the whole point of having the bankroll, right? Like when you're betting and when you have a bankroll, it should be an amount that you're not concerned about just generally losing, like, ever. Obviously, you don't want to lose your entire bankroll. And I think that the difference between going from, let's say, 100% of your bankroll to like 200 and doubling it. So let's say your bankroll is $100 and you went from $100 to $200 is much like less satisfying, or like in terms of the scale, than if your bankroll went from 100 to 0. I think that coming back from 0 is so much harder than, trying to figure out how to scale at double. And I think that like the risk reward type of thing isn't necessarily there. So I caution people with that. But at the same time, if you're betting 1 unit on a play and you lose 10 in a row, if your unit's 1% of your bankroll, you should still be relatively fine. You should still have 90% of your bankroll. So I don't really like the idea of reducing unit size, at least if like in that particular, whatever your sport is, because I think that it kind of puts you behind the 8 ball. It kind of takes some of that variance away. And now you're saying, okay, well, now those were all like basically 2-unit plays. The last 10 plays were all 2-unit plays. So now it becomes that much harder to get back to your starting point. And like, I hate to use, because I'm not going to use it, but like if you were thinking about it as in terms of a coin flip, right? If you were flipping a coin, sports betting is not flipping a coin, but if you were flipping a coin and your first 10 flips all went tails and you said, okay, well, I'm gonna change what I'm doing. Like there's no real difference. You're just flipping a coin, right? But if you were changing your strategy now, like let's say now you looked at it and said, all right, well, like I need to change my capping process. I need to do something a little bit differently. I need to use some different tools. I need to take a look at it because I'm making a mistake here, and here, or like my model seems off, my projections seem off. And then you want to reduce your unit size. I think that makes a little bit more sense because you have a real concrete reason for why you're making that change. I think that just because you're running cold doesn't necessarily mean that you should change the amount that you're playing with and the amount that you're staking, because I think it just puts you further behind the 8 ball in terms of what your upside is like in this betting scenario. Because ultimately, like if your goal was to say, well, when I get back up to 100% of my bankroll, like if I get back up from, instead of having 90 units, 100 units, if I get back up to 100 units or $100, then I can go back to my original unit. You just made it so much harder for yourself now because you've changed essentially what your criteria was. You changed your entire betting process because you just happened to lose at the beginning. If you had a 10 bet win streak first and then you lost 10 in a row, you wouldn't have the exact same feeling. But instead now, if you want to get back, if you cut your unit in half, you have to win 20 in a row to get back there. So I'm kind of rambling on this point, but basically my whole point of this is that just because you run cold doesn't mean that you need to entirely change everything that you're doing, because you need to obviously have some confidence in yourself and what you're doing and your capping ability. And whatever models, projections, information, data that you're using. And sometimes even if you are making like a little tweak, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do a complete overhaul of your unit structure either. You want to put yourself in the best position to succeed long term. And I think that if you take a short sample size or a small sample size that's really like heavily influenced by recency bias, that is going to set you up for long-term failure in the space. And I think that you need to always maintain a level of confidence in your bankroll, in yourself, and in what your process is. And that's just a critically important thing to do when you're losing or when you're winning, because you don't want to bet with emotion. And the same thing obviously goes like if you're winning. If you're winning, one of the things that I think a lot of people do is they have their bankrolls flush. Maybe you got a little bit of extra money in there. You start throwing in like fun parlays and you just start pissing away all the money you want. And it's so difficult, because I think there's obviously like when you win a bet, for most people, like there's like a certain like serotonin type of thing, and it's satisfying. And that's a lot of times why people bet. And people bet in such an amount that they like quote unquote feel something from it, right? I think that if you do that, your unit's too big, probably, and you're betting too much. Or like if you got lucky and like you hit like a big parlay, whatever, that's fine. But I think that overall, you should basically not even give a shit on a nightly basis. Like if you lose, if you go 0-3, it really just shouldn't matter. Like it matters if, it matters obviously like you want to win all your bets, but that 0-3 just is a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things. And you can't overreact to small sample sizes. And it's, if something goes on for a month, 2 months, honestly, not even a month is long enough, but like a couple months, a season, whatever, then you can go, all right, well, something's fucked up here. You really got to reassess entirely. I don't think that that's a reason. I don't think that it's impossible where you could look and say like, oh, I've been totally screwing this up, or I'm missing this piece of information. I'm relying on this too much, and making a change fast. But at the same time, you really need to just lock in and make sure that you're being consistent with your process every single time and trying to always continue to improve it. But you don't need to just completely stop what you're doing and overhaul the entire. All right, anyway, let's get into the slate. So the first game that we have is the Clippers. Well, I guess it's going to be one of the later games, but whatever. We're going to talk about it first. We've got the Clippers versus the Knicks. The Knicks are 2.5 point home underdogs here. Knicks are on the second end of a back-to-back. They just won on Tuesday night against the Dallas Mavericks. So a little bit of a lighter game, but they did wind up having to play them a little bit tighter. They really had to lock in the second half. They didn't have Miles McBride, and Mitchell Robinson sat out that game. So we'll see. I think the expectation is that he's going to play in this game, but Tibbs was a little bit cagey about it. James Harden is questionable for the Clippers. And the other thing about this spot is the Knicks are literally the worst team in the NBA on 0 days rest. They are 2-9 against the spread. And it has just been absolutely abysmal for them again, like in these spots where they just are at a rest disadvantage. And even when they're at a rest disadvantage, they are 3-11 against the spread. When the Clippers have a rest advantage, they are the second best team in the NBA, 13-5 against the spreads. I don't really think this is a good spot to back my New York Knicks. I think that if I really had to pick a side, I'd probably be looking at the Clippers. It's tough because basically when you're looking at a spread like this, you're kind of looking at it saying, all right, well, like, the Clippers are just going to win outright. Tough spot here. And it's just a brutal spot for New York in general. I'm going to coming off of one of these games, they're already, down a little bit in terms of their depth. And it's something that you really got to watch out for back in New York. I will say one of the positives here in this game was Tyler Kolek was awesome. Just absolutely awesome. He has now had 8 assists and 9 assists in the last 2 games, so 17 assists. Hasn't played 20 minutes in either game. No turnovers. Getting great minutes without Brunson and without Miles McBride. And I love the fact that he's getting some run. And I think they said he's the first player ever to put up stat lines like that. So really great for the team. I hope he's able to get a little bit more run here. Softer opponents that he's done this against are the Wizards and the Mavericks. So Clippers will definitely be a little bit of a tougher test, assuming he gets some more run here if McBride misses once again. His assist prop was at 4.5. Definitely something to consider yet again. And I feel like it was a missed opportunity. I really should have jumped on Cat's assists without McBride in there as well, along with Brunson. A little bit of a missed opportunity. Double, triple, double for Hart and Towns. His prop line, Towns' assist prop line was 2.5 in this game against the Mavericks. I'd imagine it's going to be a little bit higher against the Clippers. I also think that it might wind up being a little bit too high, honestly. If it's a little bit of it could be an overreaction based off of the triple double. And when we look at Cat, his history versus Zubac, he's had some spikes in assists. In the one game earlier this season, 23, 10, and 2. But the last couple that he had when he was in Minnesota, 18, 9, and 8, 24, 4, and 3. 8 points, crazy. 8, 8, and 4. So he has had some games with assist spikes against Zubac. There's a 9 out there back in 2020, a 5 in 2021. So definitely still not a totally dead angle, but it's going to totally depend on where the line opens and what we're looking at here. So definitely something to consider, definitely something to keep an eye out for. Let's turn to there's 2 games that are just clearly tank offs on the slate. You've got the Wizards versus the 76ers and the Raptors versus the Nets. I don't want to spend a ton of time on either of these games. I will say, though, that for the Wizards versus the Sixers, pretty much everybody's out. No Brogdon, no Koulibaly, no Keshawn George, no Middleton, no Smart, no Kispert, no Drummond, no Embiid, no Paul George, no Maxey, no Oubre, no Lonnie Walker. Quentin Grimes is off the report, so he should probably get a little bit of burn. Justin Edwards has been really good for Philly. So somebody else that I would look for here. Bub Carrington probably gets a little bit of extra burn. Alex Sarr is definitely going to get some run for the Wizards. Maybe look at his threes. I watched this really good video. Brett Usher did it for Alex Sarr. And the video was about his short roll passing and how he's essentially been like an effective assist type of player here. Looking at Sarr's assist line, it's at 2.5 plus money, plus 140. He's hit this in 4 of the last 10 games, but he's missed in 4 straight to Toronto, New York, Orlando, Utah. Thing is, he's had 2 in pretty much every game. It's just that the conversions aren't necessarily coming through. From a points perspective, though, I don't mind the look here at 16.5. And I think what I would like to do if I was looking at Sarr, there's an 18.5 for PA. I think that might be the way that you go. You're getting that it's 16.5 for the points. Really, his assist line's at 2.5, so you're able to kind of get it down 1 here, get it into the 2 range where he's got that solid floor with a little bit of upside in the assist department. I think this is a decent spot against what's a relatively undersized Philadelphia team who has given up a ton of points, good amount of rebounds, and some assists here. I think that Sarr is somebody that could help break down some of these spots for Philadelphia with, what's realistically a poor defense here. The biggest question in these games where, teams have conflicting motivations is what kind of rotations are they going to play? How long are some of these guys going to play? If they're winning, do they pull them? If they're losing, do they pull them to lose harder? Very difficult to navigate. But I do think that Sarr PA is a decent look at 18.5. Looking at the Raptors versus the Nets, Chris Boucher's out, Grady Dick's out, Emmanuel Quickley's out, Jakob Poeltl's out, Brandon Ingram's out, Cam Johnson's out, De'Ron Sharp are out. It's just a tank off. So, D'Angelo Russell's in, Scotty Barnes is in, RJ Barrett's in. My concern with the Raptors especially has been they just sit. They straight up sit their players at the end of the game. The game will be close, and you'll just see Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett just sitting on the bench. And be like, they're not going to play because we want to lose. And it sucks. It makes it very difficult to bet on their props. And I just am generally going to avoid this spot. I think if anything, I would bet unders in this game. The Nets play at a slow pace. I know the Raptors play a little bit faster, but the Nets do have a tendency to be able to drag you kind of down into the mud. And I would be looking at unders in this game, just kind of generally based off of that premise. The rest of the games on the slate, I think, are a little bit more interesting. We've got the Lakers versus the Pacers, which to me is a fascinating game. And this is one of the games that I'm most interested in. The reason being is if we look at the injury report, Rui is probable, LeBron is probable. The Pacers have no notable injuries. So we should be seeing a solid matchup here. It's essentially a pick 'em. It's been kind of floating back and forth right around that line. The Lakers are plus one in one book. They're -1 in another book. So definitely something to kind of monitor. But it's interesting because I don't think we're going to see this as like a finals matchup, but it is between two of the teams that are performing best in the NBA right now. And if we look over the past, let's call it like the last 2 weeks, we're going to be looking at two teams that have been excelling, right? Indiana's 10th, they're 6-1 over the last 2 weeks, plus 7.1 point differential. And if we look at the Lakers, they've kind of slipped over the last 2 weeks. They are 3-5, -7.7 in their point differential. The defense has been the problem, giving up 122.8 points per 100 possessions. So I think that kind of aligns for Indiana, except for the fact that their offense has not been as good over the last 2 weeks. Their offense took a dip, but overall in the season, they have the 10th best offense in the NBA. The defense has been what's been really strong for Indiana, third best defense in the league over the last 2 weeks, according to Cleaning the Glass. The spot that I'm looking for in this game, though, is I'm looking at Luka Doncic to score 30 points. It's like -104 right now. Even with LeBron James, he has not really seen much of a downturn in his usage. He is continuing to put up numbers. He's continuing to be really like the straw that's stirring this drink on the offensive side for the Los Angeles Lakers. He's hit this in 8 of his last 10 games, just absolutely frying. Put up 32 against Orlando, who's a slower paced team, 34 and 31 against Denver and Chicago. So, he's able to get up these numbers in a fast matchup, in a slower matchup, tougher defensive matchup. And I think this is a good spot for Luka to just continue having success against this Indiana Pacers team who doesn't really help too much. They do tend to play you straight up, and that's something that Luka is always going to be able to kind of dominate in. If he's not going to find the easy assist, if he's not necessarily going to try to force it to somebody that's being covered where the Pacers stay at home, and he's found a lot of success against Indiana in the past. He's hit this in 3 straight games against them, really like the 3 games he's played over the last 2 seasons, 34 points against them back in November of this year. Obviously, that was with the Dallas Mavericks, but still put up a big number in that spot, 34, 7, and 15 assists against the Indiana Pacers. So if you want to grab PA, I don't mind it if you want to try to tack on those assists, but personally, I would rather grab just the points in this spot. The assists have been a little bit inconsistent depending on the matchup for Luka here. So I like over 30 plus points for him against the Indianapolis against the Indiana Pacers. The next spot that we've got is the Bucks versus the Nuggets. A couple different things here. Giannis is questionable. Christian Brown is probable. Aaron Gordon is questionable. Jokic is doubtful. Strother's out. The big thing here, though, is that Damian Lillard is going to be out indefinitely with essentially what are blood clots in his calf. This is going to dramatically impact what Milwaukee can do from like a gelling perspective with him, Kyle Kuzma, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and how exactly they're all going to fit together, trying to build a little bit more cohesion as they try to get into the playoffs. It probably ends a real pursuit at the 3 seed. It probably means that if anything, they're more fighting off Detroit for the 5 right now. And I think it's critically important that they try to figure something out here. And they really are probably going to have to manage Giannis a little bit more moving forward, because if Giannis is, we don't really know how long Dame is going to be out. If he's out into the playoffs, you're going to need max minutes from Giannis to really have a chance in most of these matchups. So I think that he's going to be getting a little bit more rest than normal. Normally I would look for his dimes, but the dimes have not necessarily been there this season, even without Damian Lillard. So looking at his numbers on, PvP stats, when Damian Lillard is off the floor, Giannis only sees an uptick from 8 assists per 100 to about 9.3 per 100. Not nearly as much as you would have expected. The biggest thing is that Kevin Porter Jr. sees a decent sized jump. He goes from 5.8 to 9.3. Ryan Rollins is getting more run, 2.9 to 5.6. Even Kyle Kuzma is going from 2.5 to 4. So, and those guys are all ahead of Giannis in terms of what the jump is, what the differential is. And I think that with the inclusion of Ryan Rollins, Kevin Porter Jr. especially, and Kyle Kuzma, those assist opportunities that had been Giannis's when Dame was out are now kind of being dispersed a little bit more. And instead, what we're seeing is that those Giannis's assists aren't popping, and honestly, his scoring isn't really even changing too much either. We're seeing Giannis at almost a consistent 43 points per 100 with and without Damian Lillard. So any type of real uptick that we would normally see with and without Dame, we're not getting right now with for Giannis. We're seeing it for Kyle Kuzma sees it from 16 to 26, even though I have my thoughts on him. Brook Lopez from 17 to 25. Kevin Porter Jr. from 22 to 28. Gary Trent Jr. from 19 to 23. Andre Jackson Jr. from 9 to 14. So pretty much everybody else sees the bump besides Giannis. I saw this tweet and it was a video. So we've missed obviously on 2 Kuzma plays in a row. And it sucks because I wanted to keep betting on Kuzma because I think that the lines are probably too low. And it goes back to the conversation we had earlier in the show, right? Where I kept saying, I was like, well, you don't really want to change your process for no reason. Well, I watched a little bit more. I forgot, I decided I was like, all right, let me watch a little bit more of Kyle Kuzma since I bet on him now twice in a row. And it wasn't good. It was bad basketball. And I saw this tweet today, and I want to get the wording exactly right because I thought it was kind of hilarious. It was every false narrative your racist uncle has about the NBA 100% applies to Kyle Kuzma, because it was a quote tweet from a guy, young NBA. Sometimes I think Kyle Kuzma is playing a different sport, and it's just Kuzma just like spinning around, losing the dribble, like flinging up a layup off the top of the backboard. It just looked terrible. So I was like, oh, yeah. Sometimes you forget. Like, sometimes you get so into the numbers. It's easy sometimes to forget that you're betting on a sport. And, like, during the regular season, I don't watch every game. I'm not watching every game. I don't have time to. I watch as many clips as I can, as many replays. I do some of those, I do, the shortened games. I try to do the quad box as much as I can. So that way, but even then, you're watching the games, but you're not watching the game. It's impossible to literally pay attention to 4 games at the same time. So, you consume as much basketball as you can, but sometimes you have to remember, it's like, oh yeah, let me watch this and see just how disgusting this is. And after betting on Kuzma twice in a row and losing twice in a row, it's made me reconsider any Kuzma bets. For the near future. It was disgusting. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Definitely want a spot where you go, all right, maybe that wasn't the best spot that we could have taken, even though the numbers kind of point to it and everything else. But Kuzma is fucking something else. So this game is interesting because, Jokic is going to be doubtful. I would imagine he doesn't play. Aaron Gordon's questionable. Russell Westbrook has been just crushing, just absolutely crushing. And I would definitely be looking for Westbrook props here if everybody's out. I think that he would have a good opportunity for PRA, for triple-double. The Bucks tend to give up rebounds to guards and wings. So that's him. That's Christian Brown. And I think that those would be some of the good opportunities. Those are some of the things that I would want to target in this game. It's tough. I don't really have a side here. I'm a little surprised in a way that the Nuggets are -3.5 with Jokic doubtful. I guess it's kind of like a hedge on Giannis being questionable as well. I would lean towards the Nuggets still. I think the team itself is good. I think the team itself is a little bit better, but I'm still a little surprised at what the line is, given that Jokic is doubtful and not expected to play. And then if Gordon sits as well, you're going to see a number of players out for Denver. Giannis could easily be the best player on the court by a pretty significant margin. So definitely something to consider there. Finally, we've got the Celtics versus the Suns. Suns are 3.5 point home dogs. The biggest news is the Jason Tatum ankle injury. It's listed as doubtful for this game. I'm actually a little surprised that he's even listed as doubtful. He was rolling around on the ground. He seemed like he was in a lot of pain. It's kind of an unfortunate situation because it was one of those closeout spots where, Domantas Sabonis was closing out on a 3. Tatum lands wrong, high ankle sprain. I don't know. Boston really is stuck in the 2, I think. I don't really see any reason why they would push him. I don't even really understand why he's listed as doubtful for this game. I don't know why they don't just rule him out. That to me would seem to be the prudent thing to do. But I mean, you can be a little bit cagey about it. I guess it's the first game. They haven't said there's any structural damage or anything like that, but it wouldn't surprise me to see this be a week injury at least to try to get him ramped up before the playoffs. The big thing is without Tatum, a number of Celtics see an uptick in their points and in their scoring. Derek White, 22 points per 100 to basically 30. Peyton Pritchard, 22 to 29. Jaylen Brown, 29 to 35. Porzingis, 31 to 35. Even Luke Cornett sees a little bit of a jump, 14 to 18 and a half. All things to consider here, given what the Celtics injury report has looked like. Looking at even some of the assist stuff, from assists per 100 possessions, this is the thing that popped to me. Jaylen Brown jumps from 12.8 to 24.5 assists per 100 without Jason Tatum. This matchup against the Suns, I think, is one that would be decently exploitable for him as somebody that can create his own shot, drive to the rack, drive and kick. And he does seem to, not exactly relish, but he does seem to enjoy the role of being a primary option for this Boston Celtics team, getting to make all the decisions and really never having to defer, or so to speak, to somebody else. So I think that it is a spot where then he feels a little bit like, I don't want to say less selfish, but he's going to get as many touches as he wants. Doesn't have to share them with anybody else, really. And he's a little bit more comfortable dishing the ball at a higher clip. So you've got him. Derek White sees a big jump from 14 to 20 assists per. I'm sorry. I'm looking at assist points. I was like, that number is crazy. But either way, Jaylen Brown goes from 5 to 9.5. Derek White goes from 5.7 to 8.5. So either way, we're looking at a pretty big jump from both Brown and White. And again, the same point applies. I was like, these numbers can't be right, even per 100 possessions. So the thing is, again, Brown, I think, feels more comfortable. He feels like he's going to get the ball back whenever he wants it. And there's less pressure, or so to speak, to score every time he has the ball because he knows he's going to get it more often instead of just through the flow of the offense. And I think that that's important for Brown. So Brown's PRA is set at 33.5. He's hit this in 4 of 5 games against the Phoenix Suns. And this season, without Jason Tatum, he's hit this in 4 of 5 games, averaging 39 PRA. Really like the spot. Some of these matchups have been softer. There's one spot against Utah, another one against Portland that he went over. But he still had solid performances against Detroit and Orlando. Orlando, I believe, was a game based on when it was when Jalen Suggs was also playing, so still a tougher perimeter defender there. 33.5 is on FanDuel. I'm curious to see where else this opens up because I'm seeing 31.5s at Underdog and on Sleeper. So I think the FanDuel line, I'm wondering if it's a little inflated. I would wait to see where else this comes out, but 33.5 seems, either way, I think 33.5 is okay, but would obviously prefer a lower line like the 31.5 that we're fetching from some of these other books, or so to speak, in Underdog or services, whatever you really want to call them. But Jaylen Brown PRA is something I would look at. I would look at RA too. But honestly, the big thing is that he's crushed Phoenix scoring the basketball. He's over in 5 of 5, averaging 28 points per game, 24 plus in all of them. So I want to include the rebounds and the assists based on the fact that without Tatum, he's been so good rebounding the basketball and diming, like I mentioned. He's averaging 8 rebounds a game without Tatum this season, and he's averaging 6.8 assists per game without Tatum. So I like the idea of the combo prop. He can kind of capitalize with a well-rounded performance, and it's a number he could still go over just on points alone. So I want to just see where else it opens. 33.5 is playable, but given what we're fetching elsewhere, I'm wondering if this 33.5 is like a stat or two too high. So I'd be looking at Jaylen Brown over 31, 32, 33.5 PRA in this game against the Phoenix Suns. All right, so let's transition to pods and recs real quick. I'm going to recommend coffee's obviously a recommendation for most people. I don't even think it needs to be recommended. But I've been doing espresso a little bit more lately. Instead of my full-size coffee, I'll do like a double espresso shot or a triple espresso shot, do like a Splenda in there, maybe a little bit of my like oat milk creamer or whatever. I just like it. I feel like I just like that there's less volume, honestly. I hate when I drink a big coffee. Like I like getting a big coffee. I'll get a 24 ouncer from Wawa or something like that, right? And I just hate that like you drink it, you just have to piss. You feel like a little bit full. By the time you finish the coffee, it's cold because I'm not just guzzling down like a 24-ounce coffee first thing in the morning, and I don't love it. So instead, I've been doing like an espresso shot or two or three, and you can kind of sip on it if you want. You can still put it in one of your like travel mugs, whatever, so it stays warm. And it just, I don't know, it just has been a better drinking experience for me. I think it's got like that sharper flavor. It's a little bit more bitter, a little bit more coffee kind of taste. Doesn't feel like watered down. Like we have two, so it's stupid, but like whatever. We have two coffee machines in my house. I like the Nespresso. My wife likes Keurig, which is great for me because it's cheaper for the Keurig pods anyway than the espresso pods. And I always know that whatever I buy, I just have to buy for like what I like. And when I've drank the Keurig and I hate it. It just tastes like water to me. Like I just don't want that. So like I've been enjoying this like just espresso diet that I've been doing, and I've started buying just more espresso pods instead. And I just felt like I was making coffees too, even the espresso coffees. I was making coffees, and I just wasn't finishing them. Like I would leave a little bit at the end. I was like, why am I so tired? I needed that caffeine. Whereas with the espresso, I'm just ripping through it. I'm chilling. It's fine. So gonna recommend that, and I'm gonna just generally recommend espresso. I just think it's a great thing to have, and maybe throw a little biscotti in there if it's the season. If you're doing a little dessert, you want a little something sweet, throw a biscotti in there. It's always a blast to have a little bit of a that nice Italian cookie. That's my recommendation for today. Honestly, this part of the season is just such a slog. I'm so excited for the playoffs to start. I've been doing the the player prop forecasts and the series previews with all my like player prop best bets. I'm debating on how exactly I'm going to release those things. We haven't had the bandwidth, so to speak. So it's something that I'm considering what we're going to do with that. I think I might do maybe like a live show. Maybe I'll do like an extra pod or something like that where we can break down each series at a little bit greater length, a little bit more analysis, and then give out the best bets that way. But definitely excited. Those have been something that have absolutely crushed, honestly. And it's definitely going to go in the huddle as well. So those lines on those types of props are super fucking volatile because they're so much harder to set, whether it's like a points leader, assist leader, rebounds per game, whatever. They're so much harder for the books to set, and we absolutely destroy them. So I think that it's definitely valuable. I also think that it's one of the things that, or one of the things that you would want to get early. I think that if you didn't get things earlier, you were like, like whatever, like I don't need it every time. Like I don't want to pay for access to that. I'll get the plays when they come out a couple hours later or whatever. If the line moved, the line moved. The line didn't move, the line didn't move. It's okay. Like I don't want to pay for that. This type of thing is the one thing that if you had to pay for anything, this is the one thing that you should pay for, because the early access matters when you're betting on these leader props where the difference, like these lines just steam a shitload just immediately because they're wrong. And you'll see stuff go from like 10-1 to 4-1. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? And where I'm building a position, the whole bet is basically me saying sometimes I'll be like, well, I like players. I'm going to fade the favorite, and I like players B and C. You can't do that if the two lines got steamed to oblivion because you didn't get it for an extra like 4 or 5 hours. That's really where you're getting the value. And that's the whole point of what we're doing here, trying to get you early access. And I think that this is probably one of the most valuable parts of the service that you can have. So I know that we're doing like I said, we're doing a free trial right now for a week. I think that we're going to be running an MLB package. So that would take you from like now through the summer, basically through like football season, start of basketball season again. So you would obviously get all the sports, you get baseball, basketball, football, whatever's going on, you get. And I really think this is where you find a lot of value in getting the lines early, and in what we do. So again, reminder, that link is down here in the bio. And this episode is, I think that's where you get a lot of the value, is in getting those lines early, making sure that you're getting the best angles and the best opportunity to get down on the plays. And that's really where you're getting your value. So again, get that for free. Get the week in, join us, cash with us for a week, and then I'm sure you're going to want to stay. And additionally, obviously, this episode is brought to you by Rhythm, #1 AI betting tool in the market. Get it in your phone. It's going to help you each and every day. Besides the plays that I put out there, you can get help with your own analysis and some of the recommendations from Rhythm. Make sure you tune in to Coast to Coast on Thursday with me and Andrew O'Connor Watts, also presented by Rhythm. And we're going to get you some cash today, get you some cash on Thursday, and we are, again, going to continue to cash that.